Sometimes the most powerful words are the ones spoken in desperation. When a struggling single father meets a homeless young woman on a quiet street, neither of them knows their lives are about to change forever. Keisha has nothing but a worn backpack and one simple offer. She isn't worth much, but she can cook. Roland, barely keeping his own family afloat, stands frozen as her quiet courage stirs something deep inside him. In that moment, two broken lives hang in the balance. What would drive a young woman to offer her only skill to a stranger? And what would make a poor father open his door to the unknown? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The alarm clock's harsh beep cut through the darkness at 5:30, as it did every morning. Roland's hand shot out from under the thin blanket, slapping the snooze button with practiced precision. He lay there for 9 more minutes, eyes closed, gathering the strength to face another day. The ceiling above him had a water stain shaped like a bird in flight. He'd stared at it so many times he could trace its outline in his sleep. When the alarm sounded again, he forced himself upright. The apartment was cold. The heating bill had come due last week, and he'd had to choose between that and keeping the electricity on. He'd chosen electricity. At least they could use the oven to warm the place up when it got really bad. Roland shuffled to the bathroom, careful to step over the squeaky floorboard that would wake the kids. The face that looked back at him from the mirror seemed older than his 34 years. Lines had carved themselves around his eyes, and grey had started threading through his dark hair at the temples. Annette used to joke that he'd be distinguished when he got older. She hadn't lived to see it happen. He pushed the thought away. Grief was a luxury he couldn't afford during the morning routine. In the kitchen, Roland started the coffee maker, the one appliance that still worked reliably. While it gurgled and hissed, he opened the refrigerator. 1 carton of eggs with 3 left inside. Half a gallon of milk, expiration date 2 days past. A package of generic hot dogs. Some wilted lettuce he should probably throw out. Ketchup, mustard, and a jar of pickles that had been there since before Annette died. He pulled out the eggs and the milk, sniffed the latter to make sure it was still good. Close but not quite sour yet. It would have to do. The bread was on the counter, along with a stick of margarine that had gone soft in the night. Roland dropped 2 slices into the toaster, pressed down the lever and waited. 30 seconds later, smoke began curling up from the slots. He popped the toast up quickly, burned on one side, barely warm on the other. He scraped off the worst of the char with a butter knife over the sink. "Morning, Daddy." He turned to find Bridget standing in the doorway, wearing the pajamas that were getting too small for her. At 8 years old, she was tall for her age, all long limbs and serious eyes. She'd been serious even before they lost Annette, but now it seemed permanent, as if she'd decided that childhood was something she could no longer afford either. "Morning, sweetheart. You're up early." Couldn't sleep. She climbed onto one of the mismatched chairs at their small kitchen table. Tyler had bad dreams again. Roland cracked the eggs into a bowl, whisked them with a fork. "The one about Mommy?" Bridget nodded. "I told him the story. The one about the princess and the garden. He went back to sleep." "That's good. Thank you for taking care of your brother. Somebody has to." The words stung, though she hadn't meant them to. Roland poured the eggs into their only frying pan, the one with the loose handle he kept meaning to fix. He stirred them slowly, watching them transform from liquid to solid. "I take care of you both," he said quietly. "I know, Daddy. I didn't mean it like that." But they both knew what she'd meant. Roland worked 2 jobs, morning shift at the warehouse, evening shift stocking shelves at the grocery store. He left before they woke up for school and came home after they were asleep, except on his one day off. Bridget had become the parent in his absence, getting Tyler ready for school, making sure homework got done, putting together whatever meals she could manage. She was 8 years old, and she knew how to stretch $1 further than most adults. Roland divided the scrambled eggs onto 2 plates, added the burnt toast with margarine scraped thin. He poured 2 glasses of the questionable milk. "Go wake your brother. Breakfast is ready." While Bridget was gone, Roland allowed himself 30 seconds to stand at the sink and close his eyes. Just 30 seconds to feel the weight of it all. Then he straightened his shoulders and returned to the stove. Tyler emerged holding Bridget's hand, his hair sticking up in all directions. At 5, he still had that softness that children lose as they grow older. His pajama top was on backward, and he was carrying the stuffed bear that Annette had given him on his 3rd birthday. "Hi, Daddy," he said, voice still thick with sleep. "Hey, buddy. How'd you sleep?" "Okay. I had a dream about Mommy, but Bridget made it better." Roland lifted Tyler into his chair, pushed the plate in front of him. "What did you dream?" "That she was in a big garden with lots of flowers. She said she was waiting for us, but not to hurry. She said to take our time and be good." Roland's throat tightened. "That sounds like a nice dream." "It was, mostly. I just wanted to go with her." "I know, buddy. But we need you here." Tyler picked up his fork and began eating with the focused intensity of a hungry child. Bridget ate more slowly, methodically, making each bite last. Roland wondered if she was savoring the food or just trying to make sure Tyler got enough. He poured himself coffee, added powdered creamer, because real milk was too precious. The coffee was bitter and weak. He'd been reusing the same grounds for 3 days, but it was hot and caffeinated, which was all that mattered. "What are you doing today, Daddy?" Tyler asked between mouthfuls. "Working like always. But I'll try to be home before you go to bed tonight. You said that yesterday." "I know. I'm sorry. Sometimes the store needs me to stay late." Bridget looked up from her plate. "We know, Daddy. It's okay, but it wasn't okay, and they all knew it. This was no way for children to grow up, raising themselves, eating whatever they could scrape together, living in an apartment that was always too cold or too hot, depending on which bills had been paid that month." Roland checked the clock on the microwave, 6:15. He needed to leave in 10 minutes to catch the bus to the warehouse. "Mrs. Kovac, we'll check on you after school," he said. "I called her last night. Mrs. Kovac was their elderly neighbor, a widow who'd lived in the building for 30 years. She had a soft spot for the kids and didn't charge much for watching them. Not that Roland could really afford even her discounted rate, but she seemed to understand and never pressed him when he was late with payment." After breakfast, Roland helped Tyler brush his teeth and get dressed properly. He made sure Bridget had her homework in her backpack. He checked that the door would lock behind them when they left for school. All the small rituals of single parenthood performed with the efficiency of long practice. At the door, both children hugged him. "Love you, Daddy," Tyler said. "Love you both. Be good today." Roland grabbed his jacket, worn denim with a broken zipper, and his lunch bag, which contained a peanut butter sandwich and an apple that had seen better days. He walked down 3 flights of stairs, because the elevator had been broken for 2 months, and stepped out into the cool morning air. The warehouse shift passed in a blur of boxes and pallets, the same as every other day. Roland's back ached by noon. His hands were scraped raw by 2 o'clock, and by the time his shift ended at 3:30, he could barely feel his feet. He collected his time card, nodded to the other workers heading out, and caught the bus toward the grocery store for his evening shift. He had 90 minutes between jobs, just enough time to grab something to eat, maybe close his eyes for 20 minutes in the store's break room before clocking in at 5. The bus route took him through the older part of town, where the houses had once been beautiful before time and neglect had worn them down. Trees lined the streets, their branches forming canopies overhead. In another life, this would have been a pleasant neighborhood. Now it was just another area where people struggled quietly, doing their best to survive with dignity intact. Roland was staring out the window, thinking about nothing in particular when he saw her. A young woman sat on a bench at the bus stop on Maple Street. She couldn't have been more than 22 or 23, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and clothes that had clearly seen better days. A backpack sat beside her on the bench, bulging with what he assumed were all her possessions. But it was her posture that caught his attention. She sat very straight, hands folded in her lap, looking at the world with a mixture of wariness and determination. Roland had seen that look before, in the mirror after Annette died. The look of someone who refused to give up, even when giving up would be easier. The bus rolled past, and Roland pulled the cord for the next stop. He wasn't sure why. He had limited time, limited energy, and unlimited problems of his own. But something about that young woman on the bench wouldn't let him just ride by. He walked back the 3 blocks to Maple Street. She was still there, sitting exactly as she had been. As he approached, she looked up, and he saw her tense slightly. He recognized that too, the instinctive wariness of someone who'd learned to be careful around strangers. "Excuse me," Roland said, stopping a respectful distance away. "Are you all right, miss?" Her eyes studied him, assessing whether he was a threat. After a moment, she seemed to decide he wasn't. "I'm fine, thank you. You've been sitting here a while. Are you waiting for someone?" "No." She looked away, then back at him. "Just resting," Roland nodded. He should walk away now, head to work, mind his own business. Instead, he found himself saying, "You look like you could use a meal." "There's a diner around the corner. Nothing fancy, but the coffee's decent. I appreciate the offer, but I can't accept that." "Why not?" She lifted her chin slightly. "Because I can't pay you back." The pride in her voice was unmistakable. Roland understood that too. Pride was sometimes the only thing people had left. "I wasn't asking for payment," he said gently. "Just offering a cup of coffee between 2 people who looked like they could use one." She studied him again, and this time something softened in her expression. "Why? Why what? Why would you help a stranger?" Roland thought about Bridget and Tyler waiting at home. About Annette, who'd always stopped to help anyone who needed it. About the kind of world he wanted his children to grow up in. "Because someone should," he said simply. The young woman stood up slowly, shouldering her backpack. "Coffee would be nice." "Thank you." They walked to the diner in silence. Roland held the door open, and they slid into a booth near the back. The waitress, an older woman named Phyllis, who knew Roland from his evening routes through the neighborhood, brought them menus and coffee without being asked. "The usual for you, Roland?" she asked. "Just coffee today, thanks." Phyllis looked at the young woman. "And for you, honey?" "Just coffee, please." After Phyllis walked away, Roland wrapped his hands around the warm mug. "I'm Roland." "Keisha." She said it quietly, as if she wasn't used to introducing herself. "How long have you been out here, Keisha?" She hesitated. 3 weeks. Almost 4. "Where are you staying?" "Wherever I can. The shelter when there's room. The bus station when there isn't." She took a sip of coffee, closing her eyes briefly as if savoring the warmth. "I aged out of foster care last month. I had a place for a while, but my roommate moved out and I couldn't make rent alone." Roland knew that story. He'd been one missed paycheck away from living it himself, more times than he could count. "What about family?" "None. My grandmother raised me until I was 7, then she passed. Been in the system ever since." Keisha's voice was matter-of-fact, but Roland could hear the weight behind it. 15 years of instability, of never quite belonging anywhere. "I'm sorry," he said. She shrugged. "It is what it is. I'm not looking for pity. I can see that." They drank their coffee in comfortable silence. Roland checked his watch. 30 minutes until his shift started. He should go soon. But something kept him in that booth, some instinct that this conversation wasn't finished yet. "Have you been looking for work?" he asked. "Every day. But it's hard without an address. No one wants to hire someone who can't put down a permanent residence. And I don't have references or experience that matters or—" She stopped herself, shaking her head. "I'm sorry. You didn't ask for my life story." "It's all right. What kind of work are you looking for?" Keisha's hands tightened around her mug. "Anything, really. I've applied at restaurants, stores, cleaning services. I keep getting the same answer, no address, no hire. Or they need references I don't have. Or experience I can't prove. What can you do?" She looked up at him, and for the first time he saw something like hope flicker in her eyes. "I can cook. Really cook, I mean. My grandmother taught me before she died. It's the one thing I'm actually good at." Roland thought about his children eating scrambled eggs and burnt toast. About Bridget trying to make meals out of whatever was in the cupboard. About Tyler asking when they could have real food again. An idea began forming in his mind. A crazy idea, an irresponsible idea. The kind of idea Annette would have had. "I have a proposition," he heard himself say, "and I need you to hear me out before you say no." Keisha leaned forward slightly. "I'm listening. I'm a single father. 2 kids, 8 and 5. I work 2 jobs, which means I'm never home. My daughter has been trying to cook for her brother, but she's 8 years old. They eat whatever we have, which isn't much and isn't good." Roland paused, wondering if he was making a terrible mistake. "I can't pay you. I can barely pay my own rent. But if you can really cook, I can offer you a place to stay and food to eat in exchange for making meals for my kids." Keisha stared at him, her expression unreadable. "I know how it sounds," Roland continued. "I'm asking you to trust a stranger. I'm asking you to come into my home with no guarantees, no contract, just my word that I'm trying to help. But my kids need someone, and you need somewhere to be, and maybe we can help each other. Why would you do this?" Keisha's voice was barely above a whisper. "You don't know me. I could be anyone." "You could be," Roland agreed. "But I don't think you are. I think you're someone who's been dealt a hard hand and is trying to play it with dignity. I think you're someone who knows what it means to be hungry and wouldn't let children go through that if you could help it." He met her eyes. "Am I wrong?" Keisha's eyes glistened. She blinked rapidly, looking away. "I'm not worth much, sir, but I can cook. That's worth more than you know." She turned back to him, and Roland saw the exact moment she decided to trust him. It was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. "Okay," she said. "Okay, yes, thank you." Roland nodded, his heart pounding. He'd just invited a homeless stranger into his home, into his children's lives. He'd made a decision that could turn out to be the biggest mistake of his life, or the best thing he'd ever done. "I need to call my work. Let them know I'll be a few hours late," he said. "Then we'll go to my apartment. The kids will be home from school soon." As he stood to use the phone, Roland thought about Annette. She would have done the same thing. She would have seen someone in need and opened her door without hesitation. He just hoped he was making the right choice. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, 2 people who understood what it meant to be tired, to be struggling, to be doing their best with what little they had. "Get some sleep," Roland finally said. "Tomorrow we'll figure out the details." As he headed to his room, Keisha called out softly, "Roland!" He turned. "This means more than you know." Roland nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He closed the door to his room and sat on the edge of his bed, his head in his hands. He'd done something impulsive and possibly foolish, but he'd also done something right. He could feel it. The first week passed in a rhythm that felt almost too good to be true. Roland woke each morning to the smell of real breakfast. Not burnt toast and questionable eggs, but biscuits made from scratch, or oatmeal with cinnamon, or scrambled eggs that were actually fluffy. Keisha had a way of transforming their meager groceries into meals that made the apartment feel like a home. Bridget's resistance lasted exactly 3 days. On the 4th morning, Roland found her in the kitchen helping Keisha prepare lunchboxes for school. They worked side by side in comfortable silence. Bridget handing Keisha items from the refrigerator, Keisha showing her how to cut sandwiches on the diagonal because it made them taste better, a trick her grandmother had taught her. Tyler had taken to Keisha immediately, trailing after her whenever he was home, asking endless questions about cooking and her grandmother and whether she knew any good stories. Keisha answered each question with patience, and Roland noticed she never talked down to him, never dismissed his curiosity as childish. On Sunday morning, Roland's one day off, he woke to find Keisha and both children already in the kitchen. Bridget was stirring something in a bowl, while Tyler stood on a chair, carefully measuring flour under Keisha's supervision. "We're making pancakes," Tyler announced proudly. "Real ones, not the frozen kind." Roland settled at the table with his coffee and watched them work. Keisha moved around the kitchen with quiet efficiency, instructing without ordering, encouraging without patronizing. Bridget's face had lost some of its perpetual worry. Tyler laughed at something Keisha said, a sound Roland hadn't heard nearly enough of lately. This is what it should be like, Roland thought. This is what the children had been missing, but the outside world wasn't quite as accepting of their arrangement. Mrs. Kovac stopped by that afternoon while the children were at the playground down the street. She carried a casserole dish and wore her most serious expression. "Roland, might I have a word?" she asked, not waiting for an invitation before stepping inside. Keisha was wiping down the counter. She looked up and Roland saw her tense. "Mrs. Kovac, you remember Keisha? She's been helping with the children." "Yes, I've heard." Mrs. Kovac set the casserole on the counter with more force than necessary. "The whole building has heard. Is there a problem?" Roland asked carefully. "People are talking, Roland. A young woman living here with you and the children. You understand how it looks." Keisha's face flushed. "Mrs. Kovac, I assure you that Roland has been nothing but—" "I'm not questioning your virtue, dear." Mrs. Kovac's tone softened slightly. "I'm questioning the judgment. Roland, you barely know this girl. You have children to think about." "I am thinking about my children," Roland said, keeping his voice level. "For the first time in 2 years, they're eating proper meals. They're coming home to someone who's here for them. Bridget isn't trying to be the parent anymore. Tyler is laughing again. But what do you really know about her? Where she came from? What kind of people?" "I know she's kind," Roland interrupted. "I know she's trustworthy. I know my children are better off with her here than they were before." Mrs. Kovac pursed her lips. She glanced at Keisha, who stood very still, her eyes fixed on the floor. "The other neighbors are concerned," Mrs. Kovac said. "Mr. and Mrs. Patterson on the second floor, the Hendersons. They're wondering if perhaps the arrangement is inappropriate." "Then they're welcome to come talk to me directly," Roland said, his patience wearing thin. "This is my home, Mrs. Kovac, my family. And Keisha is helping us. That's all anyone needs to know." There was a long silence. Then Mrs. Kovac sighed. "I suppose I can't argue with results. The children do seem happier." She moved toward the door, then paused. "But Roland, be careful. People will talk, and talk has a way of causing problems." After she left, Keisha sank into a chair, her hands trembling slightly. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm causing you trouble. Maybe this was a mistake." "No." Roland sat across from her. "People always talk. That's what they do when they're scared or confused or just plain bored. But what matters is what's actually happening here. And what's happening is good. You see that, don't you?" Keisha looked up, her eyes uncertain. "I see that your children are wonderful. I see that you're trying your best. But maybe Mrs. Kovac is right. Maybe you don't really know me. So tell me, what should I know?" She was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "I bounced around foster homes from age 7 to 18. Some were okay. Some weren't. I learned to be quiet, to not cause trouble, to make myself useful so people would want to keep me around. Cooking was the thing that worked. People liked it when I cooked. Is that why you offered? To make yourself useful? Partly. But also because I meant it. Cooking is what I have to give. It's the only real skill I have, the only thing I'm genuinely good at." She met his eyes. "And because I was desperate, Roland. Because I've been sleeping on benches and in shelters, and I was starting to think about giving up. Then you came along and offered me kindness for no reason. So yes, I wanted to be useful, but I also wanted to stay alive." The raw honesty in her voice made Roland's chest tight. "I'm glad you're here," he said simply. "The kids are glad. And I don't care what Mrs. Kovac or anyone else thinks." That evening, Pedro from the corner store stopped by with a bag of groceries. He ran a small shop that sold basic necessities at prices the neighborhood could almost afford. "Roland, my friend," Pedro said, handing over the bag. "I heard about your new situation. Thought you could use some extras." "Pedro, I can't accept. It's from the almost expired shelf. I'd have to throw it out anyway. Consider it a favor to me, keeping it from going to waste." He winked, and Roland knew it was a lie, a kind lie. "Besides, I heard she can cook. Maybe sometime she makes something. You bring me a sample, yes?" After Pedro left, Keisha unpacked the bag. "Chicken breasts, fresh vegetables, a loaf of good bread, even some cheese." "He's a good man," Roland said. "So are you." Keisha started putting things away. "You know, in all my years bouncing around, I never saw anyone do what you did. Most people, they see someone struggling and they look the other way. They tell themselves it's not their problem, or that the person probably deserves it somehow, or that they'd help if they could. But they can't. You didn't do any of that. You just helped. My wife, Annette, she was like that. Always bringing home strays, as her mother used to say. Lost dogs. Neighbors who needed a meal. Kids from Tyler's preschool whose parents were going through hard times. She never turned anyone away. She sounds wonderful. She was. Brain aneurysm completely out of nowhere. One day she was fine, the next day she was gone. The doctor said she probably didn't suffer, that it was quick. I guess that's supposed to be comforting, but it just made it harder somehow. No warning, no chance to say goodbye. Just there and then not there. Keisha was quiet for a moment. My grandmother died of a heart attack. I came home from school and found her in the garden. She'd been planting tomatoes. I'm sorry, me too. But I think, she paused, choosing her words, I think the people we lose would want us to keep going. To keep being the kind of people they'd be proud of. Roland nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. The following Saturday, Roland came home from his morning shift to find a small package on his doorstep. Inside was a simple apron, pale blue with white trim. Nothing fancy, clearly from the thrift store. But it had been carefully washed and pressed. A note was tucked inside. Thought she might need this. Roland brought it inside and found Keisha helping Tyler with a drawing at the kitchen table. This is for you, he said, holding out the apron. Keisha took it carefully, unfolding the fabric. Her eyes widened. Roland, you didn't have to. I wanted to. I know it's not much, but you should have something of your own here. Something that says this is your place too. She held the apron against herself, and Roland saw tears gathering in her eyes. She blinked them back quickly, but not before one escaped down her cheek. Thank you, she whispered. No one's given me anything in a long time, not without expecting something back. I don't expect anything back. You've already given us more than you know. That evening, Keisha wore the apron while making dinner. It transformed her somehow, made her seem more official, more permanent. Tyler told her she looked like a real chef. Bridget, in a rare moment of openness, said it was pretty. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Two people who understood what it meant to be tired, to be struggling, to be doing their best with what little they had. Get some sleep, Roland finally said. Tomorrow we'll figure out the details. As he headed to his room, Keisha called out softly, Roland! He turned. This means more than you know. Roland nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He closed the door to his room and sat on the edge of his bed, his head in his hands. He'd done something impulsive and possibly foolish, but he'd also done something right. He could feel it. The first week passed in a rhythm that felt almost too good to be true. Roland woke each morning to the smell of real breakfast. Not burnt toast and questionable eggs, but biscuits made from scratch or oatmeal with cinnamon, or scrambled eggs that were actually fluffy. Keisha had a way of transforming their meager groceries into meals that made the apartment feel like a home. Bridget's resistance lasted exactly 3 days. On the 4th morning, Roland found her in the kitchen helping Keisha prepare lunchboxes for school. They worked side by side in comfortable silence. Bridget handing Keisha items from the refrigerator, Keisha showing her how to cut sandwiches on the diagonal because it made them taste better, a trick her grandmother had taught her. Tyler had taken to Keisha immediately, trailing after her whenever he was home, asking endless questions about cooking and her grandmother and whether she knew any good stories. Keisha answered each question with patience, and Roland noticed she never talked down to him, never dismissed his curiosity as childish. On Sunday morning, Roland's one day off, he woke to find Keisha and both children already in the kitchen. Bridget was stirring something in a bowl, while Tyler stood on a chair, carefully measuring flour under Keisha's supervision. We're making pancakes, Tyler announced proudly. Real ones, not the frozen kind. Roland settled at the table with his coffee and watched them work. Keisha moved around the kitchen with quiet efficiency, instructing without ordering, encouraging without patronizing. Bridget's face had lost some of its perpetual worry. Tyler laughed at something Keisha said, a sound Roland hadn't heard nearly enough of lately. This is what it should be like, Roland thought. This is what the children had been missing, but the outside world wasn't quite as accepting of their arrangement. Mrs. Kovac stopped by that afternoon while the children were at the playground down the street. She carried a casserole dish and wore her most serious expression. "Roland, might I have a word?" she asked, not waiting for an invitation before stepping inside. Keisha was wiping down the counter. She looked up and Roland saw her tense. "Mrs. Kovac, you remember Keisha? She's been helping with the children." "Yes, I've heard." Mrs. Kovac set the casserole on the counter with more force than necessary. "The whole building has heard. Is there a problem?" Roland asked carefully. "People are talking, Roland. A young woman living here with you and the children. You understand how it looks." Keisha's face flushed. "Mrs. Kovac, I assure you that Roland has been nothing but—" "I'm not questioning your virtue, dear." Mrs. Kovac's tone softened slightly. "I'm questioning the judgment. Roland, you barely know this girl. You have children to think about." "I am thinking about my children," Roland said, keeping his voice level. "For the first time in 2 years, they're eating proper meals. They're coming home to someone who's here for them. Bridget isn't trying to be the parent anymore. Tyler is laughing again. But what do you really know about her? Where she came from? What kind of people?" "I know she's kind," Roland interrupted. "I know she's trustworthy. I know my children are better off with her here than they were before." Mrs. Kovac pursed her lips. She glanced at Keisha, who stood very still, her eyes fixed on the floor. "The other neighbors are concerned," Mrs. Kovac said. "Mr. and Mrs. Patterson on the second floor, the Hendersons. They're wondering if perhaps the arrangement is inappropriate." "Then they're welcome to come talk to me directly," Roland said, his patience wearing thin. "This is my home, Mrs. Kovac, my family. And Keisha is helping us. That's all anyone needs to know." There was a long silence. Then Mrs. Kovac sighed. "I suppose I can't argue with results. The children do seem happier." She moved toward the door, then paused. "But Roland, be careful. People will talk, and talk has a way of causing problems." After she left, Keisha sank into a chair, her hands trembling slightly. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm causing you trouble. Maybe this was a mistake." "No." Roland sat across from her. "People always talk. That's what they do when they're scared or confused or just plain bored. But what matters is what's actually happening here. And what's happening is good. You see that, don't you?" Keisha looked up, her eyes uncertain. "I see that your children are wonderful. I see that you're trying your best. But maybe Mrs. Kovac is right. Maybe you don't really know me. So tell me, what should I know?" She was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "I bounced around foster homes from age 7 to 18. Some were okay. Some weren't. I learned to be quiet, to not cause trouble, to make myself useful so people would want to keep me around. Cooking was the thing that worked. People liked it when I cooked. Is that why you offered? To make yourself useful? Partly. But also because I meant it. Cooking is what I have to give. It's the only real skill I have, the only thing I'm genuinely good at." She met his eyes. "And because I was desperate, Roland. Because I've been sleeping on benches and in shelters, and I was starting to think about giving up. Then you came along and offered me kindness for no reason. So yes, I wanted to be useful, but I also wanted to stay alive." The raw honesty in her voice made Roland's chest tight. "I'm glad you're here," he said simply. "The kids are glad. And I don't care what Mrs. Kovac or anyone else thinks." That evening, Pedro from the corner store stopped by with a bag of groceries. He ran a small shop that sold basic necessities at prices the neighborhood could almost afford. "Roland, my friend," Pedro said, handing over the bag. "I heard about your new situation. Thought you could use some extras." "Pedro, I can't accept. It's from the almost expired shelf. I'd have to throw it out anyway. Consider it a favor to me, keeping it from going to waste." He winked, and Roland knew it was a lie, a kind lie. "Besides, I heard she can cook. Maybe sometime she makes something. You bring me a sample, yes?" After Pedro left, Keisha unpacked the bag. "Chicken breasts, fresh vegetables, a loaf of good bread, even some cheese." "He's a good man," Roland said. "So are you." Keisha started putting things away. "You know, in all my years bouncing around, I never saw anyone do what you did. Most people, they see someone struggling and they look the other way. They tell themselves it's not their problem, or that the person probably deserves it somehow, or that they'd help if they could, but they can't. You didn't do any of that. You just helped. My wife, Annette, she was like that, always bringing home strays, as her mother used to say. Lost dogs, neighbors who needed a meal, kids from Tyler's preschool whose parents were going through hard times. She never turned anyone away. She sounds wonderful. She was. Brain aneurysm completely out of nowhere. One day she was fine, the next day she was gone. The doctor said she probably didn't suffer, that it was quick. I guess that's supposed to be comforting, but it just made it harder somehow. No warning, no chance to say goodbye. Just there and then not there. Keisha was quiet for a moment. My grandmother died of a heart attack. I came home from school and found her in the garden. She'd been planting tomatoes. I'm sorry, me too. But I think, she paused, choosing her words, I think the people we lose would want us to keep going. To keep being the kind of people they'd be proud of. Roland nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. The following Saturday, Roland came home from his morning shift to find a small package on his doorstep. Inside was a simple apron, pale blue with white trim. Nothing fancy, clearly from the thrift store. But it had been carefully washed and pressed. A note was tucked inside. Thought she might need this. P. Roland brought it inside and found Keisha helping Tyler with a drawing at the kitchen table. This is for you, he said, holding out the apron. Keisha took it carefully, unfolding the fabric. Her eyes widened. Roland, you didn't have to. I wanted to. I know it's not much, but you should have something of your own here. Something that says this is your place too. She held the apron against herself, and Roland saw tears gathering in her eyes. She blinked them back quickly, but not before one escaped down her cheek. Thank you, she whispered. No one's given me anything in a long time, not without expecting something back. I don't expect anything back. You've already given us more than you know. That evening, Keisha wore the apron while making dinner. It transformed her somehow, made her seem more official, more permanent. Tyler told her she looked like a real chef. Bridget, in a rare moment of openness, said it was pretty. After the children were asleep, Roland and Keisha sat in the living room, the television playing softly in the background. Neither of them was really watching it. Can I ask you something? Keisha said, Of course. Why did you really do this? Take me in, I mean. You could have just bought me coffee and walked away. Most people would have. Roland thought about it. I think part of it was Annette, wondering what she would have done. But mostly it was you. The way you sat on that bench, like you were determined not to give up, even though giving up would have been easier. That took courage. Real courage. And I guess I wanted to show you that courage deserves to be rewarded. I was terrified, Keisha admitted. When you first approached me, when you offered coffee, when you invited me here, I kept waiting for the catch, for the moment you'd ask for something I couldn't give. But you never did. I never will, Roland said firmly. This is what it is, a family helping each other. That's all. Keisha smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. Then I guess we're family now. I guess we are. Outside, the neighborhood settled into night. Inside, in a small apartment on the 3rd floor, 4 people who'd been lost had found something like home. 3 weeks into their new arrangement, Roland's carefully balanced world began to crumble. It started with the mail. Roland had developed a habit of checking it late in the evening, after the children were asleep, so they wouldn't see him tense up at every envelope. Bills had a way of piling up, and each one felt like another weight on his shoulders. That Tuesday evening, he sorted through the usual stack: electric bill, water bill, a credit card statement he didn't want to open. Then he saw it, a formal envelope from the building management company. His hands went cold before he even opened it. Notice of eviction proceedings. The words seemed to blur together as he read. 2 months past due on rent. 30 days to pay the full amount plus late fees or vacate the premises. Bootload. We're done 8:47. Roland sank into the kitchen chair, the letter trembling in his hands. He'd known he was behind. He'd been juggling bills, deciding which ones could wait and which ones couldn't. The car had needed repairs last month. He couldn't get to work without it. Then Tyler had gotten sick and needed medicine. Then the electric company had threatened to shut off service. The rent had kept getting pushed back, just until next week, just until he could catch up. But he hadn't caught up. And now there was no more time. He stared at the number. $1,847. It might as well have been $1 million. He made barely enough to cover rent when he was current. And now he needed nearly 2 months' worth in 30 days, plus keep paying the current month. It was impossible. Roland sat there in the dark kitchen, the letter in front of him, and felt the weight of failure pressing down on his chest. He'd promised Annette he'd keep the children safe. He'd promised them they'd always have a home. And now he was going to lose it all because he couldn't keep his head above water, no matter how hard he swam. Roland. He looked up to find Keisha standing in the doorway, wearing an old t-shirt and pajama pants he'd found for her. Her hair was down, and she looked younger in the dim light. "I'm sorry," he said automatically. "Did I wake you?" "No, I heard you come in." She moved closer, saw the letter on the table. "What is it?" He should tell her everything was fine. Should protect her from this problem that wasn't hers to solve. But he was so tired of carrying everything alone. Eviction notice. 30 days to pay what I owe or we're out. Keisha picked up the letter, read it silently. When she looked up, her face was pale. "You're behind on rent because of me. Because you're feeding an extra person." "No, I was behind before you came. The car needed repairs. Tyler's medicine. I've been behind for months, trying to catch up. You're not the problem, Keisha, but I'm not helping either. I'm another mouth to feed, another—" "You're helping more than you know." Roland rubbed his face with both hands. "The kids are eating better than they have in months. Bridget is acting like a kid again, instead of trying to be the adult. Tyler is happy. You're helping. This is my failure, not yours." Keisha sat down across from him. "How much do you need?" $1,800, plus this month's rent, which is due in a week. "Call it $2,700 total." He laughed, a bitter sound. "I make about $1,400 a month between both jobs after taxes. By the time I pay utilities and buy food, there's nothing left. I've been robbing Peter to pay Paul for so long, I don't even know who's who anymore." They sat in silence for a long moment. Through the thin walls, they could hear Mr. Patterson's television playing too loud. Somewhere above them, someone's floor creaked. "We could sell things," Keisha said finally. "The television, furniture, the TV is ancient, probably worth $20. The furniture I got at yard sales. There's nothing here worth selling. Then we find another way." Roland looked at her. "Keisha, this isn't your problem to solve." "Yes, it is." Her voice was firm. "If you lose this apartment, where do I go? Back to the streets? Back to shelters? And what about Bridget and Tyler? They'd go where, foster care?" She shook her head. "No, we find a solution together." "There is no solution. The math doesn't work. Then we change the math." Keisha pulled the letter toward her, studying it. "You said Pedro complimented my cooking. When you brought him lunch last week, he did. Said it was the best meal he'd had in months. What if—" She paused, thinking. "What if I cooked more than just for us? What if I made meals to sell? In the neighborhood, to people who work all day and don't have time to cook, or elderly people who can't cook for themselves?" Roland wanted to dismiss the idea immediately, but something made him stop. "You mean like a meal service?" "Exactly like that. Simple, affordable meals. $5 each. I could make 20, 30 meals a day if I had the ingredients. That's $100 to $150 a day. Nobody in this neighborhood has money for that. Some do. Not everyone here is struggling. And the ones who are, they're still buying fast food, frozen dinners. $5 for a real home-cooked meal? That's cheaper than most takeout." Keisha's eyes were bright now, animated. "I know I can do this, Roland. I know I can cook enough, fast enough. The only question is whether anyone would buy." Roland thought about the neighbors, Mrs. Kovac, who'd been eating nothing but canned soup since her arthritis made cooking difficult. The Washingtons, both working double shifts at the hospital with 3 kids at home. Young Mr. Stanley, who worked construction and lived on gas station food. Pedro himself, who kept odd hours at the store and never seemed to eat proper meals. "It might work," he said slowly. "But you'd need ingredients. Containers to put the food in. A way to let people know you're selling. I can make flyers. Bridget could help, she's artistic. And we'd start small. Used whatever money comes in to buy more ingredients for the next day. You'd be working all day, every day. I'm not afraid of work." Keisha's expression was determined. "I'm afraid of going back to having nothing. I'm afraid of watching you and the kids lose your home. If cooking can prevent that, then I'll cook." Roland felt something shift in his chest, the first flicker of hope in a very dark moment. "You'd really do this?" "We'd do this. Together." He looked at this young woman who'd been living on the streets a month ago, who had every reason to look out only for herself, and felt humbled by her courage. "Okay," he said. "Let's try." They spent the next hour planning. Keisha made lists, equipment they'd need, ingredients, potential menu items. Roland calculated costs and potential income. The numbers were tight, almost impossible, but there was a sliver of possibility. "We'd need to start immediately," Keisha said. "And we'd need to make enough to pay rent in 3 weeks, not 4. To give ourselves a buffer, that's $600 a week. Minimum, which is 120 meals, or about 40 meals a day for 3 days a week. It's doable." Roland wasn't sure if she was optimistic or delusional, but he admired her determination. "What do you need to start?" $50 for ingredients. Basic proteins, rice, vegetables, seasonings, and something to put the meals in. We can use the containers from the recycling center, clean them up. Oh, and we need to spread the word somehow. I'll talk to Pedro tomorrow. And Mrs. Kovac, despite her concerns about you, she knows everyone in the building. If she tells people the food is good, they'll believe her." Keisha nodded. "We'll need to make samples. 3 samples for key people who'll talk. Mrs. Kovac, Pedro, maybe a few others. Get them invested. You've thought about this before. I've thought about a lot of things. Most of them never happened. But this one could." Roland pulled out his wallet. He had $63 until payday, which was Friday, 3 days away. He handed Keisha $50. "This is all I can spare right now. Make it count." She took the money carefully. "I will. I promise." The next morning, Wednesday, Keisha was up before dawn. Roland found her already dressed, wearing her apron, making lists. "I'm going to the store when it opens," she said. "I'll buy ingredients for 3 sample meals and enough to make 20 dinners. If those sell, I'll use that money to buy more for tomorrow. What about the kids? I'll be back before they wake up. And I'll prep everything during the day while they're at school." Roland left for his warehouse shift, feeling something he hadn't felt in weeks: hope. It was fragile, tentative, but it was there. When he came home that afternoon, the apartment smelled incredible. Keisha had transformed their small kitchen into a production line. Pots simmered on every burner. The counter was covered with containers, each filled with portions of chicken and rice, seasoned vegetables, beans cooked with herbs. "I made 23 meals," she said, slightly breathless. "And 3 samples, one for Mrs. Kovac, one for Pedro, one for the Washingtons. I thought we could deliver them tonight, see what they say." "You did all this today?" "I told you I could cook," she smiled, and Roland saw pride in her expression. Pride and fear and determination all mixed together. That evening, they made their deliveries. Mrs. Kovac was suspicious at first until she tasted the food. Then her expression softened. "This is wonderful, dear. Really wonderful. You made this from scratch?" "Yes, ma'am. And I'm selling them $5 each. Home-cooked meals, delivered right here in the building." Mrs. Kovac considered this. "I'll take 2 for tomorrow. And I'll tell the Hendersons about you. Their daughter just had a baby and she could use easy meals." Pedro was even more enthusiastic. "This is exactly what I need. I'll buy 5 meals and I'll put a flyer in my store window. You make me flyers, yes?" The Washingtons bought 4 meals on the spot and ordered 6 more for the rest of the week. By the end of the evening, Keisha had sold 18 meals and had orders for 30 more. Roland did the math. $90 in one evening, with orders worth 150 more. It wasn't enough yet, but it was a start. "We might actually pull this off," he said. Keisha leaned against the counter, exhausted but smiling. "We will pull this off. We have to." That night, after the children were asleep, Roland looked at the eviction notice still sitting on the table. 30 days had become 27. The mountain ahead of them was still enormous. But for the first time since opening that letter, he thought they might actually have a chance to climb it. The weekend became a blur of cooking and deliveries. Keisha worked from dawn until the children came home from school, then resumed after dinner. The apartment constantly smelled of garlic and herbs, simmering meats and fresh bread. Roland helped when he could, delivering meals after his shifts, collecting payments, taking new orders. Bridget and Tyler quickly figured out something was happening. On Saturday morning, they found Keisha preparing what looked like enough food for an army. "Are we having a party?" Tyler asked, eyes wide. Keisha glanced at Roland, who nodded. They'd agreed to tell the children a simplified version of the truth. "Not a party, sweetie. I'm cooking meals to sell to people in the neighborhood. To earn some money." "Are we poor?" Bridget asked bluntly. Roland knelt down to her level. "We're going through a hard time, but we're working on it together. That's what families do. Can we help?" Bridget's voice was small but determined. That afternoon, the children became part of the operation. Bridget drew flyers with colored pencils, decorating them with hearts and stars and pictures of steaming plates of food. "Keisha's kitchen," she wrote in her careful script. "Home-cooked meals, $5 each." Tyler helped count containers and match lids, proud of his contribution. By Sunday evening, word had spread through the building and beyond. Orders came from people they'd never met. A single mother on the first floor, an elderly couple 3 buildings over, a construction crew working nearby who'd heard about the meals from Mr. Stanley. Monday brought 12 new orders. Tuesday brought 15. Wednesday brought 20. Keisha worked with focused intensity, her movements in the kitchen precise and efficient. She stretched every dollar, shopping sales, buying in bulk when she could, finding creative ways to make inexpensive ingredients taste extraordinary. Rice and beans became Cuban-style dishes with perfectly balanced spices. Chicken quarters turned into rich stews with vegetables. Even simple pasta became something special in her hands. Pedro stopped by Tuesday evening with a proposition. "My customers, they see your flyer. They ask me about you. I think maybe I sell your meals in my store. You give me small commission, I give you bigger audience." It was a smart arrangement. Keisha agreed immediately, and by Wednesday she was delivering 20 meals a day to Pedro's store, where they sold out within hours. The money began accumulating in an envelope Roland kept in his bedroom. Each night they counted it together. $200, $400, $650, $900. But complications emerged. On Thursday, a man in a suit knocked on their door. He introduced himself as Howard Chen from the county health department. "We've received reports that someone is operating a food service business from this address," he said, consulting a clipboard. "Are you aware that it's illegal to run a commercial food operation from a residential kitchen without proper licensing?" Roland's stomach dropped. "We're just helping out neighbors. Making some meals." "I understand, sir. But there are regulations. Health codes. If you're selling food to the public, you need a food handler's certificate, a business license, and liability insurance. And you certainly can't operate from a residential kitchen." His tone wasn't unkind, but it was firm. "I'm required to issue a warning. If you continue operating without proper certification, we'll have to shut you down and issue fines." After he left, Roland and Keisha sat in stunned silence. "How much does all that cost?" Keisha asked quietly. Roland had already pulled out his phone, searching. "Food handler's certificate is about $100 and takes 2 weeks to process. Business license is $300. Insurance, I don't even know. Several hundred more at least. We don't have that kind of money. And we definitely don't have 2 weeks." "I know." Keisha's hands clenched into fists. "This isn't fair. We're not hurting anyone. We're just trying to survive. The rules don't care about fair." That evening, Mrs. Kovac knocked on the door. Roland braced himself for more bad news, but instead she handed him an envelope. "There's $200 in there," she said. "My Social Security check came today. I want you to have it. Mrs. Kovac, I can't." "You can and you will. That girl's cooking has been the highlight of my week. And those children need their home." She patted his cheek. "Besides, I heard about the health department visit. Mr. Chen is my late husband's nephew. He's doing his job, but his heart's not in it. He gave you a warning instead of a citation. That means he's giving you time to figure something out." After she left, Keisha emerged from the bedroom where she'd been hiding. "People are being so kind. People see what you're doing. They want to help." The next day, Pedro arrived with $50. "From my register," he said. "Business has been better since you started selling meals. This is my investment in you. The Washingtons brought $30. Mr. Stanley brought 20. Slowly, impossibly, the neighborhood began pooling resources, but it still wasn't enough. They had the orders, they had the ability, but they didn't have the legal framework to continue. And the rent deadline was approaching fast, 12 days left, and they were still $800 short. Friday evening, Roland sat at the kitchen table doing math that wouldn't work, no matter how many times he tried. They'd made good money from the meals, but they'd also had to spend money on ingredients and supplies. The net profit was better than nothing, but not enough to both pay the fees for legitimacy and cover the rent. Bridget appeared beside him, holding her piggy bank. "Daddy, I want to help." "Sweetheart, no. That's your money, but we need it for the house. Tyler and me, we talked about it. We want to help save our home." Roland's vision blurred with tears. His 8-year-old daughter was trying to save them with her birthday money and loose change. Tyler appeared a moment later, dragging his own piggy bank. Together they broke them open on the table. Quarters, dimes, nickels, pennies scattered across the surface. Roland helped them count. $47.32. "That's not enough," Bridget said, her voice wavering. "I'm sorry, Daddy, I should have saved more." Roland pulled both children into his arms. "You've saved plenty. You've saved more than you know. I'm so proud of you both." That night, after the children were asleep, Keisha found Roland on the couch, staring at nothing. "We're going to lose it all, aren't we?" she said. "I don't know, maybe, probably." He looked at her. "I'm sorry. You took a chance on me, on this family, and I'm letting you down." "You're not letting anyone down. You're fighting." "We're all fighting." She sat beside him. "There has to be a way. We just haven't found it yet. The deadline is 12 days away. Even if we had the money for licenses and insurance, we'd have to stop selling while we wait for approval. Which means no income. Which means we definitely can't make rent." They sat in the quiet apartment, the weight of impossible choices pressing down on them. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm, indifferent to their struggles. "Tell me about your grandmother," Roland said suddenly. "What would she say right now?" Keisha smiled slightly. "She'd say that when you can't go through something, you go around it. That there's always another path if you're willing to look for it. Do you see another path?" "Not yet, but I'm looking." Saturday morning brought an unexpected visitor. Keisha answered the knock to find a well-dressed woman in her 50s standing in the hallway. "I'm looking for Keisha," the woman said. "I'm Diane Sutherland. I heard about your cooking from Mrs. Kovac." "That's me. Would you like to order a meal?" "Actually, I'd like to talk to you about a business opportunity." "May I come in?" Roland emerged from the bedroom, instantly wary. "What kind of opportunity?" Diane stepped inside, glancing around the apartment with a practiced eye. "I'm the director of Riverside Community Center. We have a commercial kitchen that we use for various programs, but our head cook retired 3 months ago. We've been looking for someone to take over the meal program, cooking for seniors, after-school programs, community events. When Mrs. Kovacs told me about your situation, I decided to investigate." "Investigate?" Keisha's voice was uncertain. "I've been ordering your meals all week, under different names, from different addresses. I wanted to see if the quality was consistent." Diane smiled. "It was. Every single meal was excellent. Simple food made with care and skill." Roland and Keisha exchanged glances. "I'm not sure I understand," Roland said. "Are you offering Keisha a job?" "Better than that. I'm offering a partnership. You use our commercial kitchen, which means you're legal and licensed. You continue your meal service, but you also provide meals for our programs. We split the revenue 60-40 your favor. You get a legitimate operation, we get a reliable cook, and the community gets good food at affordable prices." Keisha sat down slowly. "Why would you do this?" "Because good cooks are hard to find. Because Mrs. Kovacs speaks very highly of you. And because I believe in giving people chances when they deserve them." Diane pulled out a business card. "Think about it. Come see the facility tomorrow if you're interested. But don't take too long. I need someone in that kitchen soon." After she left, Roland and Keisha stared at each other in stunned silence. "Is this real?" Keisha whispered. Did that just happen? I think it did. This could solve everything. A real kitchen, legitimate business, steady income. It could, if it's real. If there's no catch, there's always a catch. But Keisha's eyes were bright with hope. But maybe sometimes the catch is just that you have to work hard and be honest. Maybe that's a catch I can live with. Roland looked at the calendar on the wall. 11 days until the rent was due. This opportunity had appeared exactly when they needed it most, almost too perfectly. But sometimes, he thought, life surprised you. Sometimes it knocked you down. And sometimes, just when you thought you couldn't get up again, it offered you a hand. We'll visit the center tomorrow, he said. All of us. We'll see what this is really about. And if it's legitimate, then we take the chance. Just like I took a chance on you. Just like you took a chance on us. Keisha smiled. And for the first time since the eviction notice arrived, Roland felt like they might actually survive this. Sunday morning arrived cool and bright. Roland dressed carefully, putting on his one good shirt, the one he usually reserved for job interviews. Bridget wore her church dress, and Tyler complained about his uncomfortable shoes until Keisha promised him they could get ice cream after if he behaved. Keisha was the most nervous of all. She changed outfits 3 times before settling on a simple blouse and jeans, her hair pulled back neatly. Roland could see her hands trembling as she tied her shoes. What if this is too good to be true? She asked for the 3rd time that morning. Then we'll find out together, Roland said. But we won't know unless we go. Riverside Community Center was a 20-minute bus ride away, in a neighborhood that had seen better days but was fighting to stay alive. The building itself was older, probably built in the 70s, but well-maintained. Bright murals covered the exterior walls, children playing, families gathering, hands reaching toward each other. Diane Sutherland met them in the lobby, smiling warmly. Roland, Keisha, and you must be Bridget and Tyler. Welcome. She led them through the building, pointing out various rooms. A gym, where basketball games and exercise classes were held. Meeting rooms for support groups and job training programs. A computer lab, where kids could do homework after school. An art studio. A music room, with battered but functional instruments. Finally, they reached the kitchen. Roland heard Keisha's sharp intake of breath. The space was larger than their entire apartment, with professional-grade stoves, industrial refrigerators, stainless steel prep tables, and storage for days. Everything was clean, organized, clearly designed for serious cooking. This is beautiful, Keisha whispered, walking forward as if in a dream. She ran her hand along one of the prep tables, then turned to look at the 6-burner range. You said your cook retired? 3 months ago. Bernard had been with us for 15 years. He was getting older. His arthritis was making it hard to keep up. He wanted to spend more time with his grandchildren. Diane leaned against one of the counters. We've had substitutes, but no one permanent. The position requires someone who can handle volume cooking, who understands nutrition on a budget, and who genuinely cares about feeding people well. What kind of volume? On an average day, about 100 meals. Lunch for our seniors program, after-school snacks for the kids, dinners for families in crisis. Sometimes more for special events. Diane opened one of the refrigerators. We have accounts with local suppliers. The budget is tight but manageable. And with your meal service bringing in additional revenue, we could even expand the programs. Bridget tugged on Roland's sleeve. Daddy, this place is amazing. Look how big the ovens are. Tyler had found a stack of mixing bowls and was examining them with the careful attention of a child who'd spent time in his own kitchen. These are way better than ours, he announced. Diane smiled at the children, then turned back to Keisha and Roland. Here's what I'm proposing. You'd have full access to this kitchen. You'd be responsible for the community meal programs. I'd provide the recipes Bernard used, and you could adapt them or create your own. In exchange, you'd receive a salary of $800 a month, plus the ability to run your personal meal service from here. Roland did quick math. $800 a month, plus what they could make from the meal service now that it was legal and they had proper facilities. It wasn't wealth, but it was sustainable. It was possible. What about licensing, he asked. Keisha doesn't have formal certifications. She'd need to get her food handler's certificate. That's non-negotiable. But I can cover the cost, and she can take the test online. Should have results within a week. As for experience, I've tasted her work. That's all the certification I need. And insurance? Business license. The center's insurance covers operations in this kitchen. And you'd be operating under our non-profit status, so the licensing is simplified. I've already spoken to our board. They're eager to meet you, Keisha, but I have the authority to make this offer. It was too perfect. Roland's instinct told him to look for the trap, the hidden cost, the thing that would make this impossible. What's the catch? He asked bluntly. Diane didn't seem offended. The catch is that this is hard work. Long hours, demanding schedule, and you'd be serving a community that doesn't have much money to give back. The catch is that I need someone reliable, someone who'll show up every day and give their best even when it's difficult. She looked directly at Keisha. The catch is that I'm taking a chance on someone without traditional credentials, someone I've known for less than 48 hours. And I need to know that chance is worth taking. Keisha straightened her shoulders. I won't let you down. I don't think you will. But I need more than promises. I need to see what you can do. Diane gestured to the kitchen. Cook for me now. Use whatever ingredients are in the refrigerator, whatever equipment you need. Make me a meal, and if it's as good as what you've been serving the neighborhood, the job is yours. Roland saw panic flicker across Keisha's face, then determination. She nodded. Okay, can I look at what you have? Everything is yours to use. For the next 10 minutes, Keisha examined the refrigerator and pantry, her expression focused. Roland could see her mind working, planning, calculating. Finally, she turned to Diane. How many people am I cooking for? Just me. One meal. Give me 30 minutes. Diane nodded and led Roland and the children to a small dining area adjacent to the kitchen. They could see Keisha through the serving window, moving with quick efficiency. She'd found vegetables, onions, peppers, carrots, some chicken breast. Rice, basic seasonings. Is she going to be okay? Tyler asked, worried. She's going to be fine, Roland said, hoping it was true. Bridget was less reassured. What if Miss Sutherland doesn't like it? What happens to us? Roland put his arm around his daughter. Then we keep fighting. We don't give up. But he watched Keisha through that window and he saw something he recognized. The absolute focus of someone doing the thing they were meant to do. Her movements were confident, practiced, almost like a dance. She wasn't just cooking, she was creating. 28 minutes later, Keisha emerged with a plate. She set it in front of Diane with hands that only shook slightly. Chicken and vegetable rice bowl, she said quietly. The chicken is seasoned with garlic, paprika, and a touch of cumin. The vegetables are sautéed with onions and peppers. The rice is cooked in chicken broth with herbs. It's simple, but it's complete. Protein, vegetables, grains. It's the kind of meal that fills you up and makes you feel cared for. Diane picked up her fork. She took a bite, chewed thoughtfully, took another bite, then another. The silence stretched out, excruciating. Finally, Diane set down her fork and looked at Keisha. When can you start? Keisha's knees seemed to buckle slightly. Really? Really. This is exactly what we need. Simple, nutritious, delicious. You have skill, but more than that, you have heart. I can taste it in the food. I can start tomorrow. Today, if you need me, Diane laughed. Tomorrow is fine. Come in at 8, and I'll introduce you to the staff. We'll go over the programs, the schedule, the budget. You'll need to take the food handler's test this week. I'll send you the link, and we'll need to get you some proper kitchen attire. But yes, Keisha, the job is yours. Roland stood up, his own legs unsteady. Thank you. You don't know what this means. I think I do. Diane's expression was kind. Mrs. Kovach told me about your situation, about the eviction notice. I can offer you an advance on Keisha's first month, say $500. That should help with your immediate crisis. Roland felt tears prick his eyes. Why are you doing this? Because 20 years ago, I was a single mother with 2 kids and nowhere to go. Someone gave me a chance when I desperately needed one. This is me paying that forward. She handed Keisha a business card. My cell number is on there. Call me if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow morning." They walked out of the community center in a daze. On the sidewalk, Tyler started jumping up and down. "We did it! We're not going to lose." Our house. Bridget was more contained, but Roland saw the relief in her eyes. "Does this mean everything is okay now, Daddy?" "It means we're going to be okay," Roland said. "It means we fought, and we found a way through." On the bus ride home, Keisha was quiet. Roland sat beside her, while the children chattered excitedly in the seats behind them. "You all right?" he asked. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "What if I can't do this? What if I fail?" "You won't fail. You just proved you can do this. You walked into a strange kitchen and created something beautiful in less than 30 minutes. Imagine what you'll do when you have time to plan. It's so much responsibility. All those people depending on me. You've been handling responsibility since I met you. You've been keeping this family fed, helping with the kids, managing a meal service out of a tiny apartment kitchen. This is just a bigger version of what you're already doing." Keisha leaned her head against the bus window. "A month ago, I was sleeping on benches. Now I have a job. A real job. With a salary and a purpose." "You've always had purpose. Now you have recognition for it." She turned to look at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Thank you for everything, for seeing me when I was invisible, for trusting me when you had no reason to, for giving me a chance." "Thank you for taking it," Roland said. "Thank you for staying. Thank you for saving us." "We saved each other," Keisha said softly. That evening they celebrated with the last of the ingredients from Keisha's meal service. She made a special dinner. Nothing fancy, just good food made with care. They ate together. At the small table, all four of them, and for the first time in months, Roland felt like they were going to be okay. After the children were in bed, Roland counted the money in the envelope. With Diane's advance, they'd have enough for rent with a small cushion left over. Not much, but enough to breathe. Enough to plan beyond the next crisis. He found Keisha on the couch, writing in her notebook. She looked up when he entered. "Everything's going to change now," she said. "Yes, it is. Are you ready for that?" Roland thought about his children, happy and fed and secure. About Keisha, who'd become part of their family without either of them quite planning it. About the future that had seemed so dark just a week ago, but now held possibility. "I'm ready," he said. "Are you?" Keisha closed her notebook and smiled. "I'm ready." Monday morning, Keisha left the apartment at 7:30, wearing her blue apron, and carrying a bag with her notebook and the recipe card from her grandmother. Roland watched her walk down the street toward the bus stop, her steps quick and purposeful, and felt a mixture of pride and worry. The next 5 days were a whirlwind. Keisha threw herself into the new job with fierce determination. She arrived early and stayed late, learning the rhythms of the community center, studying Bernard's old recipes, planning menus that balanced nutrition and budget. She took the food handler's certification test on Tuesday and passed with a near-perfect score, but success brought its own pressures. On Wednesday evening, Keisha came home exhausted, barely able to stand. She'd cooked 120 meals. That day, lunch for the seniors, snacks for the after-school program, dinners for 3 families in crisis, plus 20 meals for her personal service. "I can't keep up this pace," she admitted to Roland that night. "The community center needs are growing, word is spreading, and I still have customers from the neighborhood who are counting on me." Then scale back the personal service. Focus on the center. "But that's our extra income. That's what keeps us ahead." She rubbed her temples. "I'm just tired. I'll adjust." Thursday brought a new complication. Diane called an emergency meeting with Keisha and Roland. When they arrived at her office, she looked concerned. "The board wants to meet you," she said without preamble, "before they officially approve your position." "I thought you had authority to hire me," Keisha said, her voice tight. "I do, for temporary positions. But to make this permanent, with full benefits and job security, the board needs to vote. They meet Friday evening. Diane's expression was apologetic. "I'm sorry, I thought this would be a formality, but some members have concerns." "What kind of concerns?" Roland asked. "The usual. You're young, Keisha. You don't have traditional credentials or work history. One board member, Mr. Carlyle, is particularly skeptical. He thinks we're taking unnecessary risks." Keisha's face had gone pale. "So, this might all disappear, after I've already started, after I've already committed? I won't let that happen. But you'll need to present yourself well, answer their questions honestly, show them what you've shown me, that you're capable, dedicated, and exactly what this community needs." After they left the office, Keisha was silent on the bus ride home. Roland could see her withdrawing into herself, old fears and insecurities creeping back. "Talk to me," he said gently. "I should have known this was too good to be true. Nothing ever works out for people like me, people like you. Foster kids, homeless kids, kids with no family, no background, no proof that they're worth investing in." Her voice was bitter. "I've been through this before. Someone offers an opportunity. You start to believe it might be real. Then they change their mind. Too risky, too much liability. Better to go with someone safe. You're not that scared kid anymore. You've built something real here, have I? Or am I about to lose it all because some board member doesn't think I look right on paper?" Roland didn't have an answer that would comfort her. Because she was right. It was fragile, all of it. Their security still balanced on the edge of a knife, one decision away from falling apart. That evening, Mrs. Kovac stopped by with a casserole and information. "I did some research on this, Mr. Carlyle," she said, settling into the armchair with the air of someone about to share important intelligence. "He's a retired accountant, very concerned with proper procedures and credentials. He voted against hiring the last 3 people Diane recommended because they didn't have college degrees." "Keisha doesn't have a college degree," Roland said quietly. "No, but she has something better. She has results. She has a community that's already benefiting from her work. She has people who believe in her." Mrs. Kovac leaned forward. "What she needs is for those people to show up Friday night and speak for her. The board meeting? It's open to the public. Community members can attend, can speak during public comment. If Mr. Carlyle sees that people support Keisha, sees the difference she's already making, it might change his mind." After Mrs. Kovac left, Roland found Keisha in the kitchen, mechanically chopping vegetables for dinner. "Did you hear what she said?" he asked. "I heard, but I can't ask people to come speak for me." "That's too much. You're not asking. They're offering. The community wants to support you. The community barely knows me. They know your food. They know your work. That's enough." But Keisha wouldn't look at him, and Roland saw the fear in every line of her body. She was preparing herself for disappointment, for rejection, for the world to prove once again that people like her didn't get happy endings. Friday arrived too quickly. Keisha worked her shift at the community center, moving through the tasks with mechanical efficiency. Roland took the afternoon off from the warehouse, the first time he'd requested time off in over a year, and spent it making phone calls. He called Pedro. He called the Washingtons. He called Mrs. Kovac, who promised to spread the word through the building. He called Mr. Stanley and the Hendersons and Mrs. Chen's nephew, the health inspector, who'd given them a break. By 5 o'clock, he'd spoken to 23 people. 12 had committed to attending the meeting. The board meeting was scheduled for 7. Roland picked up Keisha from the community center at 6:15. She changed into a clean shirt but looked ill, her face pale and drawn. "I don't know if I can do this," she said. "You can. You already have. You just have to tell them the truth." Bridget and Tyler came along, wearing their best clothes. Bridget carried a folder with all the flyers she'd drawn. Tyler clutched a drawing he'd made of Keisha in her apron, surrounded by happy people eating food. They arrived at the community center at 6:45. The meeting room was set up with a long table at the front for the board members and rows of chairs facing it. Roland expected to see a handful of people. Instead, the room was packed. Mrs. Kovac was there, sitting in the front row. Pedro had closed his store early to attend. The Washingtons came with their 3 children. Mr. Stanley stood in the back, still in his construction clothes. The Hendersons, Mrs. Chen, at least 30 people, maybe more, filling every available seat and standing along the walls. Keisha stopped in the doorway, her hand flying to her mouth. "What? I don't understand." "They came for you," Roland said softly. "They came because you matter to them." Diane approached, smiling. "Word travels fast in this neighborhood. People want to speak on your behalf." The board members filed in at 7 sharp, 5 people, including a stern-looking man in his 70s, who Roland assumed was Mr. Carlyle. The chairman, a woman named Helen Rodriguez, called the meeting to order. After some preliminary business, she reached the main agenda item. "We're here to discuss the permanent appointment of Keisha Williams to the position of head cook for Riverside Community Center. Ms. Sutherland, would you present your recommendation?" Diane stood and spoke eloquently about Keisha's skills, her work ethic, the positive response from the community. She presented statistics: meals served, programs expanded, budget maintained. It was professional, thorough, compelling. Then Mr. Carlyle raised his hand. "With all due respect, Miss Sutherland, these are impressive numbers. But I have concerns about Miss Williams' qualifications. No college degree, no professional training, minimal work history. This is a position of significant responsibility. Shouldn't we require more substantial credentials?" The room stirred. Roland felt Keisha tense beside him. Helen looked at Keisha. "Ms. Williams, would you like to respond?" Keisha stood slowly. Roland could see her hands shaking, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "Mr. Carlyle is right. I don't have traditional credentials." Roland's heart sank. She was giving up, confirming their doubts, but then Keisha continued and her voice grew stronger. "I don't have a college degree. I aged out of foster care with nothing but a backpack and my grandmother's recipe card. I don't have professional training. I learned to cook in a dying woman's kitchen when I was 6 years old because it was the only way I could help her, the only way I could show her I loved her." The room had gone completely silent. "I don't have an impressive work history because no one would hire someone without an address, without references, without proof that I was worth the risk. But I do have something. I have the belief that everyone deserves to eat with dignity. I have the knowledge that food is more than sustenance. It's care made visible. It's how we show each other we matter." She pulled out her grandmother's recipe card, holding it up. "This is all I have from my past. But this community has given me a future. And if you let me stay, I promise I'll spend every day earning that gift." She sat down, and for a moment no one moved. Then Mrs. Kovacs stood. Mrs. Kovacs moved to the front of the room with surprising grace for a woman her age. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her purse, the letter she'd written, Roland realized. Her hands shook slightly as she unfolded it, but her voice was clear and strong. "My name is Dorothy Kovacs. I've lived in this neighborhood for 41 years. I raised 3 children here, buried my husband here, and plan to die here." She looked directly at Mr. Carlyle. "In all those years, I've learned something about credentials. They're useful for getting hired, but they're useless for measuring worth." She adjusted her reading glasses and began to read. "For the past 6 weeks, I have watched Keisha Williams work. Not just cook, work. I've seen her arrive at the community center before dawn and leave after dark. I've seen her stretch a limited budget into meals that nourish both body and spirit. I've seen her treat every person she serves with dignity, from the homeless veteran to the wealthy board member." Mrs. Kovacs paused, looking up from her paper. "But more than that, I've seen what she's done for one particular family. Roland here lost his wife 2 years ago. He's been drowning, working 2 jobs, barely keeping his head above water. His children were raising themselves. And then Keisha came along." Her voice grew softer. "I've watched those children transform. The oldest, Bridget, she was carrying the weight of the world at 8 years old. Now she's playing again, laughing. The youngest, Tyler, he was lost in grief. Now he's helping in the kitchen, learning, creating. That's not just cooking, that's healing." Mrs. Kovacs folded her letter. "You want credentials? Here are her credentials. 30 families in this neighborhood now eat better because of her. The seniors program has a waiting list for the first time in years. Children are showing up to after-school programs because they know there will be real food, made with care. Those are her credentials, Mr. Carlyle, and they're worth more than any piece of paper. She returned to her seat, and immediately Pedro stood. I own the corner store on 5th, he said in his accented English. I see everyone in this neighborhood. I know who struggles, who needs help. When Keisha started cooking, she came to my store, buying the cheapest ingredients, making them into something special. She never wasted, never complained about what she didn't have. She worked with what was possible. Pedro gestured around the room. Look at who came tonight. These people, they work long hours. They have families, problems, tired bones. But they came because Keisha matters. She feeds us, yes, but more, she sees us. She makes us feel worth the effort of good food. One by one, others stood to speak. Mrs. Washington talked about coming home exhausted from double shifts at the hospital to find her children already fed. Homework done, because Keisha had dropped off meals with instructions for the oldest to warm them up, Mr. Stanley. The construction worker spoke about eating gas station food for 2 years until Keisha's meals reminded him what real food tasted like, what it felt like to be cared for. A woman Roland didn't recognize identified herself as Betty Foster, a social worker. I've placed dozens of kids in foster care. I know the statistics. Most of them struggle their entire lives. But Keisha, she took her trauma and turned it into service. That's rare. That's precious. That's exactly the kind of person this community needs. Then Bridget stood up. Roland started to pull her back down, but Keisha shook her head, letting the child speak. My name is Bridget. I'm 8 years old. Her voice was small but determined. Before Keisha came, I tried to cook for my brother, but I didn't know how. We ate burnt food and cold cereal and sometimes nothing. I tried to be brave, but I was scared all the time. She pulled out the flyers she'd drawn. Keisha taught me that cooking is more than following recipes. It's about making people feel safe. When Tyler eats her food, he smiles. When Daddy comes home, he doesn't look so tired anymore. That's what Keisha does. She makes things better. Bridget sat down and Tyler immediately jumped up. I'm Tyler. I'm 5. Keisha is the best cook in the whole world. And she's nice. And she tells good stories. And I don't want her to go away. There were murmurs of agreement throughout the room. Even Mr. Carlyle's stern expression had softened slightly. Helen looked at her fellow board members. Does anyone else wish to speak? A moment of silence. Then Helen turned to Keisha. Ms. Williams, thank you for your honesty. Board members, I think we've heard enough testimony. Shall we vote? The 5 board members conferred quietly. Roland reached for Keisha's hand, squeezed it. She squeezed back, her palm damp with nervous sweat. After what felt like an eternity, Helen spoke. We'll vote by show of hands. All in favor of permanently appointing Keisha Williams as head cook of Riverside Community Center. 4 hands went up immediately. Mr. Carlyle sat motionless, his expression unreadable. The room held its collective breath. Then slowly he raised his hand. Unanimous, Helen said, smiling. Welcome to the team, Keisha. Officially. The room erupted in applause. Keisha's hand flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Roland pulled her into a hug, and then the children were there, and Mrs. Kovach and Pedro, and suddenly everyone was hugging everyone. And the room was filled with joy and relief, and the kind of hope that only comes from fighting hard for something and winning. Diane approached through the crowd, holding out a set of keys. These are yours, she said to Keisha. The kitchen, the storage rooms, the office. It's all yours now. Keisha took the keys with trembling hands. Thank you. Thank you so much. Mr. Carlyle appeared beside them. Up close, Roland could see kindness in his weathered face. Ms. Williams, he said formally, I apologize for my skepticism. Your community spoke powerfully on your behalf. But more importantly, you spoke powerfully for yourself. I hope you'll accept my vote as an apology. There's nothing to apologize for, Keisha said. You are protecting the community. That's your job. I'm just grateful you gave me a chance to prove myself. He nodded, satisfied, and moved away. As the crowd began to disperse, Roland stood with Keisha and the children in the now quiet meeting room. Keisha held the keys in one hand, her grandmother's recipe card in the other. We did it, she whispered. You did it. Roland corrected. "We just showed up. You showed up when it mattered most." She looked at the keys, then at the card. "My grandmother would have been proud. She would have been," Roland agreed. "And so would Annette." They walked out of the community center into the cool evening air, a family bound not by blood but by choice, by struggle, by the determination to lift each other up when the world tried to push them down. The bus ride home felt different, lighter somehow, as if the weight they'd all been carrying had finally lifted. Tyler fell asleep against Keisha's shoulder, exhausted from the evening's excitement. Bridget sat beside Roland, holding the folder with her flyers, a small smile on her face. "We're really going to be okay, aren't we, Daddy?" she asked quietly. Roland looked at his daughter, this child who'd been forced to grow up too fast, and saw that some of her childhood had returned. The worry lines around her eyes had softened. She looked 8 again instead of 80. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to be okay." When they arrived home, it was nearly 9 o'clock. Roland carried Tyler, who barely stirred, and put him straight to bed. Bridget followed shortly after, too tired to protest her bedtime. Alone in the living room, Keisha sank onto the couch, still holding the keys. She stared at them as if they might disappear if she looked away. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up," she said. "That this is all some dream I'm having on that bench." Roland sat in the armchair across from her. "It's real. You earned this, Keisha. All of it. Did I? Or did I just get lucky? Right place, right time, right person willing to take a chance?" "Both can be true. Yes, I took a chance. Yes, Diane took a chance. But you're the one who made those chances pay off. You're the one who worked 16-hour days. You're the one who turned a crisis into an opportunity. You're the one who stood up in that meeting and spoke your truth." Keisha was quiet for a moment. "When I was in foster care, there was this counselor, Mrs. Patterson. She used to tell me that my past didn't define my future, that I could be anything I wanted to be. I never believed her. I thought she was just saying what counselors are supposed to say. And now I think maybe she was right. Maybe the past shapes you, but it doesn't have to limit you. Maybe sometimes the hardest experiences make you stronger, more capable, more empathetic." She looked up at Roland. "I wouldn't wish foster care on anyone, but it taught me things. How to adapt, how to be resourceful, how to find home in unexpected places. You've given that gift to my children, to all of us. You showed us that family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up, about caring, about being there when it matters." Keisha stood, walking to the window that overlooked the street. "Do you remember what I said that first day? I'm not worth much, but I can cook." I remember. I believed that. I really believed my only value was in what I could do for others, not in who I was. She turned to face him. "But these past weeks, watching Bridget and Tyler, seeing the community come together, listening to all those people speak tonight, I realized something. I am worth something. Not just because I can cook, but because I matter. Because people care about me, not just about what I can provide." Roland felt his throat tighten. "You've always mattered, Keisha. From the moment I saw you on that bench. You mattered then and you matter now. Thank you for seeing that. For seeing me when I couldn't see myself." They stood there in the quiet apartment, two people who'd both lost so much and somehow found each other exactly when they needed to. "What happens now?" Keisha asked. I start work officially on Monday. I'll be working full-time, making enough to contribute to rent, to expenses. I should probably start looking for my own place." "No," Roland said quickly. Only if you want to. But you're part of this family now. The kids need you. I need you. Not as a cook or a helper, but as family. You have a home here for as long as you want it." Keisha's eyes glistened with tears. "Are you sure? I don't want to be a burden." "You could never be a burden. You've been a blessing from day one. Stay, Keisha, please." She nodded, unable to speak, tears sliding down her cheeks. Roland crossed the room and hugged her, and she hugged him back. And for a moment, they just held on to each other. Two survivors who'd found solid ground at last. When they pulled apart, Keisha wiped her eyes and laughed shakily. "I'm a mess." "You're perfect." That night, Roland paid the rent. He wrote the check for the full amount, plus late fees, and put it in an envelope to drop off at the management office in the morning. There was even a little money left over. Not much, but enough to breathe, enough to plan, enough to hope. He stood in his bedroom, looking at the photograph of Annette on his dresser. She smiled out at him from behind the glass, forever young, forever kind. "I kept my promise," he whispered. "I kept them safe. And I hope, you'd be proud of how I did it." The photograph didn't answer, of course, but Roland felt something like peace settle over him. Annette would have liked Keisha. She would have seen in her the same thing Roland had seen: courage, dignity, and a good heart, fighting against impossible odds. In the living room, Keisha was writing in her notebook by lamplight. Roland watched her for a moment from the hallway. She looked different than she had 6 weeks ago. Her shoulders were straighter. Her face had filled out slightly from regular meals. But more than the physical changes, there was something else. A confidence, a sense of belonging, a knowledge that she had a place in the world. She looked up and caught him watching. "Can't sleep?" "Too much excitement for one day." "You?" "Planning menus for next week. Thinking about how to make the budget stretch further, how to add more vegetables without increasing costs." She smiled. "Normal things. Work things. It feels good to have normal problems instead of survival problems." "It does, doesn't it?" Roland made them both tea, and they sat together in the quiet apartment, planning and dreaming and talking about the future in a way neither of them had dared to do before. Outside, the city slept. Inside, a family, chosen, unexpected, but no less real, had found their way home. 6 months later, winter had settled over the city with a gentle hand. The first snow of the season dusted the streets, making everything look clean and new. Roland stood at the window of their apartment, watching the flakes fall. Behind him, he could hear Keisha in the kitchen, teaching Bridget and Tyler how to make bread from scratch. Their voices mingled with laughter, the children asking questions, Keisha answering with patient warmth. The apartment looked different now. Small changes, but meaningful ones. New curtains that Mrs. Kovac had helped them pick out. A proper dining table that Pedro had found at an estate sale. Pictures on the walls, not just of Annette and the past, but new photos too. Keisha with the children at the community center. All 4 of them at Thanksgiving dinner. A snapshot of Bridget's first cooking class, her face serious with concentration. Keisha's kitchen had become something of a neighborhood institution. She still ran her meal service, now completely legitimate, delivering 40 meals a day to regular customers. But more than that, she'd started teaching cooking classes at the community center twice a week. One for seniors who wanted to learn to cook for themselves again, another for youth aging out of foster care. That second class had been Keisha's idea. "I want to teach them what my grandmother taught me," she'd told Diane. "That cooking is a skill, yes, but it's also dignity. It's independence. It's the ability to care for yourself and others." The classes were always full. Roland had been able to quit his evening job at the grocery store. With Keisha's income contributing to the household, they could manage on his warehouse salary alone. It meant he was home for dinner now, home to help with homework, home to tuck the children into bed. Bridget had stopped trying to be the adult. Tyler's nightmares about his mother had faded, replaced by dreams of becoming a chef like Keisha. "Daddy, come see," Tyler called from the kitchen. "I needed the dough all by myself." Roland joined them at the counter. Tyler stood on his step stool, his small hands covered in flour, and proudly displaying a lump of dough that was definitely over-kneaded, but that Keisha was praising anyway. "That's going to make excellent bread," she said seriously. "Strong hands make strong dough." Bridget was shaping her own portion, with careful attention to Keisha's earlier demonstration. At 9 now, she'd grown taller, her face losing its sharp angles of worry. She looked up at Roland and smiled, a real smile, unguarded and happy. "We're making dinner rolls for the seniors' lunch tomorrow," she explained. "Keisha says homemade rolls make people feel special." "They do," Roland agreed. He caught Keisha's eye over the children's heads, and she smiled at him, flower on her cheek, completely at home. Later that afternoon, while the bread was rising, Roland walked with Keisha to the community center. She had a cooking class to teach, a special session for a group of teenagers who'd just aged out of the foster system. Exactly as she had. In the commercial kitchen, 7 young people waited, all wearing the same guarded expression Keisha had worn when Roland first met her. The look of people who'd learned not to hope too much, not to trust too easily. Keisha stood before them, wearing her blue apron, the one Roland had given her that first week, and pulled out her grandmother's recipe card. "My name is Keisha, and 6 months ago, I was exactly where you are now. No home, no family, no idea what came next." She held up the card. "This was all I had. A recipe for chicken soup that my grandmother taught me when I was 6 years old." The teenagers stared at her, some skeptical, some curious, all listening. "Today, I'm going to teach you to make this soup. But more than that, I'm going to teach you something my grandmother taught me. You are not defined by where you've been. You're defined by what you choose to do with what you have. And sometimes what you have is just enough." She gestured to the ingredients laid out on the prep tables. "We have chicken, vegetables, herbs, simple things. But in an hour, we're going to transform these simple things into something nourishing and good. That's what cooking teaches you, that transformation is possible, that broken pieces can become something whole, that there's always a way to make something beautiful out of what you're given." One of the girls raised her hand, tentatively. "What if we mess it up?" Keisha smiled. "Then we learn from it and try again. That's the other lesson. Failure isn't the end. It's just information. My grandmother used to say that the best cooks are the ones who've burned the most meals, because they've learned what not to do." Roland watched from the doorway as Keisha guided the teenagers through the recipe, patient with their mistakes, encouraging with their successes. He saw himself in them, that same desperation, that same need for someone to believe in them, and he saw what Keisha had become, not just a cook, but a teacher, a mentor, a beacon for those who needed to see that survival was possible. That transformation was real. On the wall behind her, Diane had hung a photograph, Keisha teaching a previous class, Bridget and Tyler standing beside her as her assistants, all 3 of them laughing at something off camera. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "Keisha's Kitchen, where everyone belongs." That evening, walking home through the gentle snow, Keisha was quiet. Roland waited, knowing she'd speak when she was ready. "I saw myself in them," she finally said. "Those kids. I remembered what it felt like to be so alone, so scared, so certain that nothing good would ever happen. And now I know that good things do happen. That sometimes, when you're at your lowest, someone reaches out a hand. And if you're brave enough to take it, everything can change." She looked at him. "Thank you for being that hand, Roland, for seeing me when I was invisible, for giving me a chance when you had every reason not to. Thank you for taking it. Thank you for staying. Thank you for making us a family again." They walked the rest of the way in comfortable silence, the snow falling softly around them. At home, they found Mrs. Kovacs had dropped off a pot of soup. "Just returning the favor," her note said. The children were doing homework at the kitchen table. The apartment was warm, filled with the smell of rising bread and the sound of life being lived. Roland stood in the doorway, taking it all in. 6 months ago, he'd been drowning, barely keeping his head above water. 6 months ago, Keisha had been on a bench with nothing but a backpack and hope. Now they were here, together, a family built not from perfection, but from need and courage and the willingness to help each other through the hard times. Outside, evening was falling. Somewhere in the city on a quiet street, another person sat on a bench, wondering if tomorrow would be better than today. Keisha saw them from the window, a young man, shoulders hunched against the cold. That familiar posture of someone who'd run out of options. She grabbed her coat, going somewhere. Roland asked. Keisha smiled, the same smile she'd given him 6 months ago when she'd offered to pay it forward. "Just keeping a promise. I won't be long." She walked out into the snow toward the bench, toward someone who needed to hear that they mattered, that they had worth, that sometimes kindness appears exactly when you need it most, and the cycle continued. Broken people helping broken people, creating something whole.